What is a subject to? A beginner's explanation in plain English. Hey gang, my name is Mike with MrNoFluff.com with my real estate dojo, and today I'm going to explain in plain English what is subject to investing, aka taking over house payments. So let's dive in. Now, a subject to can happen two ways. There's only two ways it can happen. Okay. Well, let me rewind it back, okay, before we get into that. Let me define what a subject to is. A subject to is a situation where I will market to a motivated seller, and the key word is motivated seller. They got to be motivated. And all I do is I just jump into the seller's shoes and take over their payments. So, in other words, their existing mortgage that they have, I never cash it out. I never pay it off. The seller never pays it off. All I do is just make the seller's payments for them. Meanwhile, I get to own the house. The seller deeds me the property. The seller gives me the title to the property. I have ownership of the house. However, I never paid for the house in cash. I never went to a bank to borrow money. I never went to a hard money lender. I never went to a credit card company. I didn't do any of that because the seller already had an existing loan or mortgage. And all I did is just bought their house subject to their existing loan. Now, when I market to find motivated sellers, and I get into how to do it in a second, but when I market to find motivated sellers, there's only two things that can happen. I can meet a seller that owns their house free and clear. Okay, number one. Or I can meet a seller, right, that has a mortgage, they have a loan, right? And here's the thing, only in America, about 77% of the people in America or homeowners have debt in their property, okay? They have a debt, they have a loan. And only about 33% own the house free and clear, okay? And I would say that that number is a lot less, the free and clear, because of all the toxic mortgage um, assets that are available to bankers and consumers where they do home equity loans, they, use their house equity as a credit card. So I would even argue that less than 33% of Americans own their house free and clear. Okay. Now, there's only two ways a seller, when I market seller comes to me, there's only two things. They have their house free and clear, or they have a mortgage on their home. If they have it free and clear, of course, I'm going to negotiate with them to buy their house at a deep discount. And sometimes I can buy their house at a deep discount. What does it mean to be a deep discount? 60 cents on a dollar minus repairs. Okay, guys. And if I'm a wholesaler, then I have to tackle the wholesaling fee that I'm going to ask for and get that as a discount from the seller. Now, a lot of sellers that own their homes free and clear, which is a very small percentage of the population, don't want to sell their home that way. Okay, so one way is that I can pay them more than the deep discount is by structuring seller financing. Okay, where the seller becomes my private bank. Now, a subject to is different than seller financing because a seller financing, um, in this situation that I'm talking about, where they own the house free and clear, they don't have a mortgage, so I'm not going to take over their mortgage. However, we will create a new note. Now, if you want to know more information on what that means, you might consider joining my academy. We go into all that, but I will create a new note with the seller, and the seller will become my private bank, and therefore, I don't have to come up with all the cash. Therefore, I don't have to go to a credit card. Therefore, I don't have to, ask friends and family. Therefore, I don't have to get a loan from a mortgage or hard money or credit card, any of that stuff, because the seller will become my own bank. And why would the seller that owns their house free and clear be willing to become my own bank? One thing and one thing only, and that's why I said highlight these words, because they're motivated sellers. That's it. There's nothing else. Now, what does it mean to be motivated? Well, I have tons of videos about that, so I'm not going to get into it. But let me roughly say, when you're motivated, you must sell, right? You must sell. You can't do anything about it. Now, we'll get into what makes sellers motivated in a second. But now I want to put my attention and focus on to What happens when I market and I find a motivated seller, but they have a debt in place, they have a mortgage in place, because majority of people in America will have mortgage in places, okay? And in 2021, going forward, okay, so pay attention. There's going to be so many people that have, we're going to have no equity or negative equity or just marginal equity, okay? So I'm not even going to talk about negative equity or no equity right now. I'm just talking about the people that may have some equity or marginal equity, doesn't matter. But I market to a motivated seller, I meet them, they're highly motivated. Maybe they're going to a divorce and they have a debt in place. Well, now I have the option to buy their house at a deep discount. But unfortunately, they have too much debt in place because majority of people have too much debt in place. So I can't buy their home at a discount. So what should I do? Should I just spend this, throw this lead in the trash? Absolutely not. What I will do is just take over the seller's mortgage because there's a significant value in that for me. What is the value in there for me? Number one, I'll negotiate a non-recourse loan. Okay, I'm not going to get into that. If you want more information about that, get into my blog or download my free book, guys. It's totally free at mrnofluff.com. Okay, I sell it on Amazon. You can get it for free at mrnofluff.com. Okay, I'll create a non-recourse loan. I don't have to come up with all the cash. I can negotiate a 0% interest rate, but I can't do that with other places. And if they have a loan already in place, okay, then I'll just take over their existing loan, which is going to be a lot lower versus if I had to go get a commercial loan. Because more than likely, this seller got a FHA loan and they live in this property and the interest rate is almost like 0%. We never heard anything like that, but that's where the economy is in 2020, guys. Okay. Now, so if the seller has a debt, no problem. I'll buy their house subject to their existing mortgage and I'll just take over their payments. And if the seller doesn't have a debt, hallelujah, I want to buy it and try to negotiate a deep discount. But if I can't do that, then I'm willing to pay the seller a little bit more or maybe even more, but allow the seller to become my own private bank. Okay. Now let's go down a little bit. There's only two types of sellers out there. So when you find a motivated seller that owns a house, there's only two types. Number one, they're emotionally motivated. Okay. Now I'll get into that in a second, but these are my favorite types. Okay. Or they're going to be financially motivated. Now, I don't like the financially motivated one because they're the low hanging fruit. But they're the easiest to get. Like my very first deal I did ever was from a low-hanging fruit. It was a family that was going through a divorce. There was a city worker, and they were behind on their house payments about 2 months, and so that was financially motivated. Okay, and they had some emotional motivation, but what really made them really motivated was the financial aspect. I mean, emotionally, they were going trouble because of going through a divorce, but the reason they must sell their home is because they couldn't afford it financially. Okay, now let me give you an example of what an emotional motivated situation is me. I buy from motivated sellers and I've been motivated. Like if you download my free book, I talk about a property 3054 Rambling Drive. I bought this property in the last crash meltdown, 2007, 2008, 2006, around that time. Okay. And I bought it from a firefighter. And I start, turning around and I rent the property out and I was making a good monthly cash flow from it. 5 years, 6 years, 7 years later, I can't remember the top of my head, I'm freestyling. Um, I became motivated because I had a family situation. So I ended up selling this home $120,000 below market because I wanted to sell it real fast. And I did sell it real fast. Okay. So what happened is on that property that I just sold at $120,000 below market, right? What happened is that on that property, I pocketed over $70,000 in equity in just one check. Okay. And check this out, guys. On top of that, I got like 5, 7 years of passive income from that property. And when I added that up, the passive rental income from that property, we owned it for such a long period of time, plus the equity cash out, I made freaking over $100,000, guys, off one deal. And now, how much did I have to come up out of pocket on that deal? 3K, guys. I bought the seller's home for 3K. How did I buy their home for 3K? Well, they were behind 2 months. I had to pay for their clothes and stuff like that. By the time I was done and over with, 3K, I got their home, and then I just had to make the monthly payments. And I immediately got got my brokerage firm involved. We put it up on the MLS. We got renters in there ASAP, and we start renting it out, and we start cash flowing 300 a month immediately. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, the power of subject to. Now, I know that if you talk to your average real estate agent, they're going to say, oh, this is not going to work. If you talk to your average um, attorney, they're going to say, oh, this is not going to work. There's a due on sell clause, DOS. And it's absolutely right. There is a due on sell clause, which means that when the seller transfers the title of the property to me, because I become the rightful owner of the property in a subject to, the bank now has the ability to accelerate the mortgage. And I've done multiple free videos about why banks they're not in the business of foreclosure because it costs them a lot of money, right? And they just want to collect their payments. And in my experience, they've never foreclosed on me. But this is still a possibility, and there's a risk out there. But I know it when I go into these equations that there's going to be a risk for me, and I explain to the seller and I disclose to the seller as well. So he knows and I know, and we're both willing to take the risk on the do on sell. And again, I've never had a loan called on or accelerated, but there is the possibility. But again, when I only have to put $3,000 down to buy a property, right? I don't have to do a credit check. I don't have to borrow 100K. I don't have to go put 100K in my savings or 401 into the program. All I have to do is 3K, and the property is already making $300 a month positive cash flow. Well, how long is it going to take me to get my 3K out so I have zero risk? You write it in the comments, guys. How long is it going to take me if I'm making $300 a month? How long is it going to take me to take my 3K off the table from the positive cash flow? And then I have no risk involved in it. So if the bank did accelerate the loan, which they never did, but if they did, right, then I have no risk in the table. And yes, the seller will take a foreclosure, and they already know, right? And I will lose maybe my equity if I was holding on to the property 7, 10 years. But if I had holding on to property 7, 10 years and the bank decided to call the note, then there's a lot of exit strategy. I can sell it like I just did. It's like sell it, below market, like $120,000 below market just to get it done, right? Which exactly what I did. I could refinance it. I could do so many different strategies, right? But so there's two types of people in the world. There's the people that look at risk and say, "Oh, it's so risky," and there's people like me that understands the risk and do a risk management and say the risk of me investing $3,000 and losing my money is versus making 100K, right? Which because I know people that go borrow $200,000 and then they make 100K. Where me, on the other hand, I put only $3,000 down, bought the property, and I got a $70,000 plus check at when I sold the property, guys. And I have videos and the paperwork on my blog at MrNoFluff.com, and I go into this exact deal in my free book at MrNoFluff.com, guys. So go ahead and make sure you get my free book. It's at MrNoFluff.com. I go into exactly how to do this stuff. The free book is called Start Where You Stand, guys. Start Where You Stand. You can download it right off my course. Now, if you guys have any questions, comment, leave it below. I'll be happy to help you out. We have tons of free resources at MrNoFluff.com. If you enjoyed this video, if you get some value into it, do me a favor, jab the like button so we get this information out to so many people. Because when I first started in this business, everyone I went to said, no, you can't do it. So I finally found an attorney that did the deal for me. So I finally found a title company that did the deal for me. So I did my first deal. Once I did my first deal, dude, I knew it worked, okay? And in my book, I show you exactly on HUD-1, which is a government paperwork, where they say, subject to. It says it on a HUD-1. And in my book, I show you exactly where it is. So make sure you get my free book. If you need help in finding these subject to deals, structuring them, negotiating, consider joining my academy. And if you're really, really serious, then consider working with me in my profit sharing coaching, guys, where I work directly with you for a whole year. Okay. Thanks for liking. Thanks for leaving a comment. Much love to you. And remember, guys, you're so powerful. You're beautiful. You are kind. You're generous. You're intelligent. And you can do anything you want. The very first thing is to believe it yourself. Much love.